He's been super manipulative. He's told my friends, like he's texted my friends saying that I can't be their friend anymore. He's done that to my mom's friends. Like he's messaged them, called them, and was like, "You're not allowed to talk to her anymore."
Classics beats. Stories, I'm a fool for your love.
Hey everyone, it's your girl Layla. Welcome back to my channel. So I haven't done a story time video in quite a while. Honestly, this has been a long time coming. I hinted at it like a few times online, I would say, like in one of my vlogs, last Vlogmas. I talked about how something was affecting my mental health and I wasn't really ready to talk about it, but today I am, and I'm in a very crowded parking lot at a mall. Everybody's doing their Christmas shopping, everybody's like in the Christmas spirit and stuff like that, and this is when I chose to finally film this video. So the reason why I'm in my car today, if you guys saw from the title, I still live with this person. Actually, correction, they still live with me. I bought my own house when I was 24. This person has literally been kicked out multiple times, but they won't leave at this point. And I know that online, what they tell their followers, what they tell my neighbors, what they tell their friends, is all lies. I'm 100% sure that they've been saying that they bought this house themselves. They've even said online that I don't pay rent. I wonder sometimes, I'm like, actually no, you're the one that doesn't pay rent. I am paying the mortgage. The house is under my name. Look at my freaking bank statement and see how much money I owe the bank right now, because I'm paying a mortgage for the next, well, I did like a 30-year mortgage, so I'm paying it for a while. So it is my house. Why would I be paying rent, you know? So we should start from the beginning. I have a lot to go through because it's been 28 years. 28 years. All right. So the term sociopath, it has many, many traits, it's like a spectrum, I would say. You know, there's like antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, etc. Like there's a lot that goes into sociopathy. In my opinion, this person shows a lot of those traits. I'm not trying to diagnose them. As you guys know, I work in healthcare. I'm not, you know, saying that this is what they have and this is blah 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 blah. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this from a personal opinion perspective, not like a healthcare perspective, if that makes sense. So I also want to do a little disclaimer. If you guys are triggered by manipulation, by controlling behavior, by cheating, any of that stuff, then don't watch this video. I'm going to have to make this into multiple parts because I know I'm not going to fit 27 years worth of, or 28 years. I keep forgetting how old I am. I can't fit 28 years of stuff into this one video. I just can't. It's going to be like 2 hours long. So I'm going to make multiple parts to this, so if you guys want to continue watching the series, make sure you hit the subscribe button below, subscribe to my channel. I upload 3 times a week, Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and no, not all my videos are negative. Most of them are positive for the most part. I do a lot of makeup reviews and a lot of vlogs and that stuff, but today we are going to be doing the story time finally. I'm finally ready to talk about this. Okay, you guys haven't gotten who I'm talking about just yet. It is my dad. I will start from the beginning. I was born in a small town in BC, in British Columbia, Canada. It was called Armstrong, and that's important to this video because I do move to Alberta later on in this video when things progress. And my mom is an immigrant from the Philippines. So my mom literally did not have anybody, like a friends group or anything like that, other than the people she met in the small town I lived in. And 95% of the population there was white. So there's not a lot of Asian people. A lot of Asian people, when they became friends, they kind of stuck together really close. My mom had a few really close friends. The first incident that I can really remember took place when I was like 3 to 4 years old. My mom had this friend, and we're gonna call her Brenda. Brenda was there throughout my whole childhood. I always took Brenda's advice. Brenda was always there for me, and she's actually the reason why I'm with my fiance today. I always have trusted Brenda's opinion. She's always been there for me. She's been there since I was a baby. So she was one of my mom's best friends, and she has always had a really strong-willed personality. Like, she would always just tell it how it is. If she had a problem with you, or if she had a problem with something that you were doing, or I don't even know how to explain it, just with anything, she was one of the most honest people that I've ever met, and she would always tell you how it is, or she'd give you advice. And she would always tell my mom, always stick to your guns, always stick up for yourself. My mom would tell her pretty much everything that went on, and she always encouraged her to, be a strong person and to be independent, not depend on anybody else, because obviously you don't want to depend on somebody else for your own happiness. First memory that I had with my dad was that he was he did not like Brenda. And every time Brenda would always come over, visit my mom. She would come over for dinner. She would pick us up, take us to her house. She would pick us up, take us to McDonald's, grocery shopping, etc. My mom never knew how to drive, so my mom never drove, and nobody taught her how to drive. So she was very dependent on my dad in that sense. She needed a ride everywhere. Like I said, we were from a small town, so we'd have to drive at least 20 minutes to the city to get, we had a grocery store in our town, but like specialty stuff like rice and all of that stuff, like Asian food, you'd have to go into the city to get. So Brenda would always come over, visit my mom. She would always give my mom rides everywhere. She would take me to McDonald's after school. She would pick me up. She would babysit me when my mom was working and stuff like that. It takes a village to raise a child. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, my mom had a lot of help from a lot of her friends, her Filipino friends, when I was growing up. Whenever Brenda would come over, I would notice that my dad would always be hiding in his room, and then whenever Brenda would leave, he would come out and he would eat. Like, he would never eat dinner with us. He would never, if Brenda was there, he would never just be around Brenda. And one day I confronted him about it. I was like, why do you hide when Brenda comes over? Do you not like her? And then he just told me basically, yeah, I don't like her. So my mischievous little ass, I ended up telling Brenda that my dad didn't like her, and she confronted him, and it was a little bit better. They were cordial after that. And sorry, there's a plane. Another thing I had noticed from when I was a child is that whenever my mom would speak on the phone with her friends, with her Filipino friends, it's just a lot easier to speak in your own dialect when your English is not your first language. So she'd always speak to her friends in Visaya or Tagalog. And he would always have a problem with that, especially if he was in the same room. He just always assumed that she was talking about him, she was talking smack about him, she was talking bad about him or whatever. So he'd always tell her to speak English whenever he's in the same room as her. So that's kind of controlling. I was never allowed to learn how to speak Filipino, Visaya, Tagalog. I was not allowed to learn that because, again, I think he just assumed that we would start talking about him behind his back or something like that. Or the excuse was always that he didn't want me to mess up my English or just get confused when I went to school. I don't know what I was talking about, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense. But with my cousin, it was the same way, so it was never really that weird for my mom. She just was like, oh, maybe Canadian people are just like this. So there was that. I just remember a lot of arguing growing up. My parents would always argue, and I always witnessed it. They never tried to hide it from me or anything. I just have memories of me sitting in my room. So I had like my bed with my headboard behind the bed. It was not against the wall. There was like a little space, and then there was a bookshelf on the other side of the wall, if that makes sense. So there's like a little crawl space, and like where my bookshelf was behind my headboard, and I would read books there. And I would always like hide there, and I would always be crying because every time they argued, I always thought it was about me or something I did or something like that. That's the thoughts you have when you're a child, right? You don't really understand why your parents are arguing or mad at each other. It's just kind of scary because they were always yelling, and my dad always yelled at my mom. Like, he always had like a super loud voice, and my mom would always be yelling as well, you know, to get her point across. So I guess they just didn't think that that would affect me or that I would really remember it when I was older. But of course I did, because it happened quite frequently. I will say that my parents were not happy. Like, they were never like a really lovey-dovey couple. Like, I never grew up with two parents that really, you know, that really loved each other. Whenever we would go to parties, whenever we would celebrate each other's birthdays or Christmas or anything like that, or if we'd always have a lot of visitors around, like a lot of family members come over, my mom's cousin, my dad's family, like his, you know, parents, his brothers and sisters and stuff like that. Whenever they would come over and stuff like that, I feel like my parents had to put on a show, like an act, I would say. Like, they always seemed happy when people were over at our house and stuff, and then afterwards it was back to arguing. A lot of their arguing stemmed from money problems. We were pretty poor when I was growing up. That's probably the reason why my mom only had me. She only had one child. She didn't have any more, because she just knew that they financially couldn't take care of two children. It was hard enough for just one, but two would be just completely crazy. So a lot of their arguments came from money. My dad was always really selfish with his money, he would always hide his money from her. He never had money for things, etc. And he had a really good job. For the 90s, he was getting paid like 15 something per hour, which was pretty good because minimum wage was like $6.50. So he was making decent money, but we just never had money. Like, I never had a bike growing up. I still don't know how to ride a bike because I never had one. Nobody bought me one when I was a kid. So like, I never had Game Boys, I never had video games, I never had a DVD player growing up. We were just poor, like, and it doesn't make sense because, like I said, he had a good job with a lot of money. Here in Canada, I don't know if it's like this in the States too, but you basically, whenever you have a child, you get money from the government every month for their basic needs. So like baby food, formula, diapers, etc. Like, just needs that a baby has, right? So they would, you know, my mom, I think she would get like maybe like $30 a month. Like I said, this was the 90s, so $30 a month for a child was not like unheard of. Like, you could totally live on that. And like nowadays, I think that mothers get like 100 and something per child. So, you know, it's just to cover their basic needs. And so I had reusable diapers because my family couldn't afford to buy boxes of diapers, obviously. So she would save that money every month from the government. She would just like buy formula and stuff like that with, like, whenever they would go grocery shopping. Clothes and stuff I didn't have a lot of, but she would save this money in an account because she wanted me to get an education. Education was just like very important for her. It was obviously important to her. Any Filipino mother would tell you that education is like the most important thing, and it's something that nobody can ever take away from you. So she had this joint account with my dad. She would start putting the money that she would get from the government every month into that account. She had odd jobs. She didn't work a lot when I was a child because she didn't trust my dad to watch me. Because the one time he did watch me, I got my foot scalded because he left a cup of coffee out on the floor, and I was walking around or running around and I stepped in the coffee, knocked itself over, and I was really lucky that my whole body didn't get burnt or anything like that. So from that point on, my mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom until I was like 8 years old, until I could, you know, fend for myself pretty much. So she would work odd jobs here and there. She would babysit on certain days of the week. She would get, you know, the odd paycheck here and there, money from the government, like I said. And she started, you know, putting it into this account because education was super important for her, for me to have. And she got her account almost up to $8,000 in the span, you know, of a few years, obviously. And then my dad started taking it out. Like, he started taking money out of it. My mom would never know where it went because, like, he never ever told her where his money went. He just said he had no money, so he had to take, you know, like $200 out to pay like a bill or something. And then it was like another $200. And then it went down to, I think, like $3,000 from $8,000. So he spent a good $5,000 in the span of like a few months. And then that's when she took it all out of the bank and put it elsewhere, like made her own account or something like that, because that money was just gonna go to nothing. And they would always argue about that. So when I was like 10 years old, my dad moved to Alberta. Alberta was the province of opportunity at the time. It was the early 2000s and the oil industry was booming. He chose not to work in the oil industry though, because there was a lot of jobs in the city, because a lot of people from the city were moving to Fort Mac to work in the oil patch. So there was a lot of available jobs in the city, and he chose to move to Calgary. And he left us in BC because, you know, he just wanted to work, I guess. And he promised my mom a lot of things. He promised my mom that she wouldn't have to worry about money anymore, that he was going to be making a lot of money here. He was going to work his butt off, save a bunch of money for us to move here within the span of a year. So when he left us in BC, I already told you my mom doesn't drive or anything like that. He barely would send her money. And at this point, she was making minimum wage. She worked at a restaurant like 3 days a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever she could afford childcare. I think she hired one of her friend's children to babysit me, like she was like 13 or something. She would work 3 days a week on minimum wage, and she had to take care of me. She had to take care of putting food on the table and paying bills, and sometimes my dad would send her like $300 for the rent, and sometimes she would be waiting for a really long time, and we would have to, I remember we'd have to walk in the snow for like maybe 25 minutes ish. Like we lived on the other side of this small town, and we had to walk to the other side to go to the Western Union to go and see if my dad had sent us money, and we would always be disappointed. He'd even tell her like, I sent you money, but then we'd go and there would be nothing there. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of like lying and stuff like that, and it was just really frustrating for her because it was really hard to, you know, work with like $6.50 per hour and be expected to pay for everything, take care of your child, and, you know, all of that stuff. So it was really, really difficult for us at that time when he left. Her friends were always like Brenda. Like I said, Brenda would always pick me up from school and stuff like that, so we wouldn't have to be walking out in the snow. It snowed a lot there, but it wasn't as cold as Calgary. It was like still -10, which was really, really cold for a child, I would say. But yeah, I just remember not always having food. So eventually he did move us out here about a year later, and like I said, he made all these promises that we were gonna have money. My mom ended up paying for the moving truck, and he literally had no money for groceries. We were moving into this condo, and like I said, he had been here for a year. He had been working for a year, and he was renting a room at his friend's house. So it was very easy to save money and stuff like that, but he chose not to. So when we moved here, we were completely broke. There was no food. A lot of times our power would get cut off because he wouldn't pay the electric bill. It was a mess. It was a mess. And I just remember them arguing a lot. My mom had always wanted to leave. She'd always wanted to divorce him, but the cost of a lawyer was just too much for her. So she chose to stay, and I know she felt guilty because she didn't want me growing up without a dad. Even though I was in my teen years and stuff like that, she just put up with it. That I can go into a whole other story time about like, okay, the first time with the whole like cheating thing, my mom found a woman's like a cami in his work bag, and like a cami, like, you know, the ones with the like lace, it's like a tank top, I guess, but it goes like under your clothes. She found that in his work bag one time, and he was like, oh, it must have been somebody in the change room, it must have been theirs or something, and I probably picked it up and threw it in my bag. And my mom was like, you have a co-ed change room? Like, what? So there'd always be like excuses when she would find stuff. The next thing was her friend from work. Oh my god. This could go into a whole nother story time. I'm probably gonna make a whole story time about it, but she had this friend from work. He was like obsessed with her. He would always talk about her. He would always ask my mom about her, how she was. He would go to church to see her, like multiple times a week. It wasn't just like every Sunday to give her a hug. He was like printing out her pictures. Like, he was obsessed with her. And that pretty much almost ended their marriage, I feel like. And the only reason why it didn't is because, first of all, she didn't feel the same. She didn't like him like that. And it was super awkward for my mom. Obviously, when you work with somebody and you have to see them every day, and you know that your husband's like in love with them, like, obviously my mom was bothered by it. So that almost broke up their relationship, but we ended up going on vacation and trying to forget about it. And that's what he would do. I feel like he knew how to manipulate her into a sense where when she was really upset, he would just, you know, buy her something or go on vacation or, you know, have a party or like a get together at my house or something like that, so she couldn't be mad. I found that happened a lot. When back in 2003, my grandmother passed away, and she left my dad with her house. So he ended up selling the house, buying another, like, a house here in Calgary. So he like put a down payment on. He didn't pay like cash for the whole house. He just like sold the other house, put a down payment for a house here, and he had all of this like extra money in the bank. I think it was like 20,000 or something crazy. It was a lot of money. So at this point, you guys, my teeth were really messed up. I had messed up teeth as a child. I know you can't tell. Thankfully, there's something called braces, and they do an amazing job. So I had really, really bad, like, messed up teeth. And my dad had made a lot of promises to me with, like, you know, I'm gonna buy you a bike, I'm gonna fix your teeth, all of this stuff like that, and like none of that ever happened. That money disappeared within a few months. My mom and I didn't know where it went. My mom had to work 3 jobs to pay for braces for me, and she had to wake up at like 5 a.m., go to work at a job she did not like, at a job where she had to put up with and deal with a lot to pay for my teeth, because he didn't care enough to even, like, I don't know, like, even pay for the first orthodontist appointment. It was all my mom. So that makes me so angry. At one point, he basically, like, he has issues with paying bills and stuff like that. Like, he never had money. He had 2 jobs at one point. He was making a decent amount of money, and he just never had money. We never knew where it went. He would never tell us. He was always super selfish about that. And whenever people would visit us, like his sisters, his family, and stuff like that, they would always be paying for him. So he just, like, never had money. And at one point, they almost lost the house because my dad had borrowed like 10 grand from a loan company, and they almost took the house because he wasn't able to pay them back by a certain amount of time. You know how you put the house as like a collateral? So that's what he did. My mom ended up putting the house under my name and her name when I was 18 years old. He had to sign the house to me because she didn't want, you know, obviously us to be homeless. So that ended up happening. He always would take equity out of the house. Always, like, the mortgage would just never get paid. Like, it would just keep going up and up and up and up and up. It pretty much doubled. We would never know where it went. We would, again, we would never have money. So at this point, like I said, my mom was working 3 jobs, so we were okay for a while. I ended up going to college, getting a good job after college, all of that stuff. I ended up buying a house. We all end up moving together. This is the point where things get worse. What ends up happening is, you know, he tells people that, you know, it's his house, he bought a house. He hasn't worked in the past 5 years. So he's been basically our dependent. We've been taking care of him. We've been, you know, buying groceries, paying the bills, paying the mortgage. He gets, you know, he essentially gets to live there for free. He ended up convincing my mom to buy him a car because he never did maintenance on his car. Like, he won a car from one of the lotteries here. Like, he bought a lottery ticket and won a car. He traded that in for an SUV, and he just never did maintenance on it. He didn't believe in, like, getting regular oil changes or anything like that. So the car just pretty much died, and he convinced my mom to buy him a car. Like, put it under her name because he didn't work. He didn't have, like, a good credit score. Like, they wouldn't give him a loan to buy the car if it wasn't for my mom. So there was that. He's been super manipulative. He's told my friends, like, he's texted my friends saying that I can't be their friend anymore. He's done that to my mom's friends. Like, he's messaged them, called them, and was like, you're not allowed to talk to her anymore. The list goes on. Facebook statuses like this one. When my fiance moved here from Edmonton, he pretty much lost his shit. He lost control of me at that point. He even tried telling my fiance that he wasn't allowed to see me anymore. This is a super long video. I'm just gonna try to end it here. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hopefully you learned something, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. I upload 3 times a week, Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'll see you guys soon in my next video. Bye everyone.